When Jesus was here ministering on this earth 2,000 years ago, he said some incredibly profound things. And a lot of the statements that Jesus made, they're actually crazy if he's not God. So one of these, let me give you an example. In Matthew chapter 11, Jesus says, "Come to me, all who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." So the religious people in Jesus' day, they hated Jesus because they didn't actually believe that he was God. They believed that he was some kind of an imposter, somebody who was just trying to raise up a bunch of revolutionaries to follow him and do his bidding. And the religious people were afraid that Jesus was going to lead the people away and take away the power that they held on to so dearly. And Jesus' words, if you think about it, they are incredibly offensive if he's not actually God. Because who can go around saying to the common person, come to me and I will give rest to your souls. Take my yoke upon you because my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Those are comforting words, but the only reason that those words are comforting is because Jesus is actually God. If Jesus isn't God, those words, they're not just comforting, they're misleading. If you put your trust and faith in someone who doesn't have the power to deliver what they're promising, that's incredibly misleading and a horrible thing to do. But the reason Jesus' words are comforting is because he is God. And this past Sunday, we looked at Matthew chapter 27. And this is a passage that usually gets looked at Easter because it's dealing with Jesus' death. But I want to highlight a couple verses in this. In Matthew chapter 27, verse 50 and 51, it says, "And when Jesus had cried out again in a loud voice, he gave up his spirit." So the scene here is Jesus on the cross. And he cries out in this loud voice and he gives up his spirit. So he willingly lays down his life. He dies on the cross. Now listen to verse 51. It says, "At that moment, the curtain of the temple was torn in two from top to bottom. The earth shook and the rocks split." So at the very moment that Jesus gives up his life on the cross, the curtain in the temple was torn from top to bottom. Now, the significance of this is absolutely incredible. So the Gospel of Matthew was written specifically with the Jews in mind, to show them that Jesus really is God in the flesh. And the reason that Matthew points out what happened in the temple is because that curtain that Matthew's referring to is the curtain that held people back from getting into what was called the Holy of Holies. And so in the temple, there was this place called the Holy of Holies where the presence of God dwelt. And only one time a year could a person enter into that Holy of Holies. And it was only one, not just any person once a year. It was the high priest that could do it once a year, entering into the presence of God. In the Old Testament, God was unapproachable. When we had burdens and difficulties and challenges in life, God was this unapproachable being that was kind of behind the curtain. And when Jesus came, what he did was he offered a way for us to actually be in relationship with the creator of the universe. And the reason it was impossible for us to have a relationship with the creator of the universe was because of our sins, the dirt in our lives that held us back from God, because of his holiness, because of his righteousness and his justice. And so God had this temple that separated the people from the Holy of Holies. If you wanted to get into the Holy of Holies, you had to be the high priest and you had to go through all of these insanely particular ritualistic cleansing processes to be able to get there, to show the people that God was holy. But when Jesus came and he took our place. He took all of our sin, all of our wickedness upon himself. And on the cross, he took all of that stuff and he died the death that you and I should have died. And that's God himself taking upon himself our punishment, our dirt, our wickedness. And at the moment that Jesus did it, and the Bible is so clear, Jesus, his life wasn't taken from him. He willingly laid it down. He gave up his spirit. And at the moment he did that, this temple was torn, or this curtain was torn in the temple, opening the way for you and I to be able to enter into the Holy of Holies. And so Jesus' words that we read in Matthew chapter 11 are incredibly comforting because it's God himself saying to us, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and heavy laden. All of you who have burdens, you can bring those to me. I've made a way for you to have a relationship with me." No longer can only one person enter into this relationship with God, but because of what Jesus did for us on the cross, all of us, if we trust him, if we believe him, have an opportunity to enter into a relationship with him. And this week I want to encourage you, all of us face burdens. As a pastor, my heart breaks every week as I talk to people and hear people's challenges and difficulties and burdens. But I also have the privilege of being able to point people to God. I as a person, a human being, don't have the answers, but Jesus Christ does. And he's invited us into a relationship with him where he says, come to me. If you have burdens, if you have difficulties, if you have challenges, come to me because I can give your soul rest. And so I want to encourage you this week to go to Christ with those challenges. Put your trust in him and he will give rest to your soul.